Hi, this is Dave Bartosiewicz with Have You Experienced Jesus? Hey, I thank you for watching today. I have a guest on the show. You probably know who he is. It's the infamous Lee Baker. The infamous Lee Baker. I'm glad that we were able to get together and talk. I know that you were down in Manti.
Short trip down to Manti.
And then you came up here, and, and you have another show that you're going to be going, I guess, going on in the next half hour or an hour or so. Hey, I know that there's been a lot of things. Last time I talked to you, I think it was actually last year in Manti, and then we did a couple of videos in September with Alan Richardson.
Oh, Alan out in front of his house.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
so I haven't met you. I haven't gotten together with you for at least about 8 months, 9 months, and there's been many things that have changed in your life.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. Some of the
like
things.
What are you hinting at?
Well, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
How's that? But I know that you just also got back from Israel.
It was an awesome
Jerusalem.
trip. Right.
And I wanted you to share some of your feelings about what occurred. Some of the things. Obviously, you have a big ministry with the Mormon faith. For those who don't know Lee Baker, he was a bishop, formerly a bishop of the LDS Church, the Mormon Church, and his ministry is with Kathy as well, and they go out and actually just help people to understand what Mormonism is all about.
We love the Mormon people.
We love them. I love the Mormon. I've said that many times. They're phenomenal, great people.
Right.
As a matter of fact, one of my daughters is still a Mormon.
Yeah.
And so, certainly I love the Mormon people. However, the theologies are a little bit different, right?
The theologies are huge.
And so we have to look and understand what the theologies are.
Right.
And so tell me what you have learned, some of the things that you have learned being in Israel, and comparing it to what Mormonism teaches. Did you see anything that you started thinking and saying, whoa, that is so different. I believe this, and now I've come to realize this, and it's so opposite of what Mormonism teaches.
Absolutely, Dave. And again, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Any time we're here, we love to spend time with you. So as Kathy and I have been developing our ministry, the core foundation is we believe that the Lord has called us to teach Mormonism to the Mormons. Because a great number, to include ourselves, I was a member of the church for 32 years and Kathy for 50 years. And there was a lot of Mormonism that we didn't know, that we didn't understand. And one of the key reasons for the last trip to Israel was to understand Genesis chapter 17, verse 11. I'm finishing a third book now, and this is focusing on the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible. And this is something that only a Mormon would understand. And I arranged to speak with 3 senior rabbis there in Jerusalem, 2 in Jerusalem and 1 in Hebron, at the very tomb of Abraham. And the key of that, to answer your question, what has changed, was the graphic representation of how Joseph Smith, in one fell swoop, has really handed us the opportunity to see that there was no way he was a prophet. Because in Genesis chapter 17, verse 11, Joseph Smith changes the age requirement of circumcision from 8 days to 8 years.
Years old, yeah.
Right. And to a Mormon, that doesn't seem, too irresponsible, but that story cannot be told without laughter outside of Utah. So I went to a couple of rabbis, senior rabbis, in Jerusalem, and I gave them the church perspective on what is the purpose of the Joseph Smith translation. First, I had to describe who Joseph Smith was and a little bit about Mormonism. 2 of them had never heard of Mormonism, and that was fine.
Well, it's a very small, let's face it, small religion.
Very small. But although BYU has the largest dig in Jerusalem because they have the money to throw at it. They're looking for the house of Lehi, and it's kind of an internal
Have they found anything?
No, they haven't. But it's the largest and longest dig.
Spending a lot of money where maybe they could be feeding people instead.
Or build another mall, because Orem could use another mall. I don't know about downtown Salt Lake. But the point is the impact, the thought, and the Mormons can take a look in the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible, which follows right after the Bible. Joseph Smith felt the need to correct not only Old Testament, but New Testament transcripts as well. And the purpose of the Joseph Smith translation is to bring back those plain and precious truths into the Bible. So the Joseph Smith translation actually outweighs the Bible, and those are used hundreds of times in the General Authority talks and General Conference and that. So we know the validity and the authority to a Mormon of the Joseph Smith translation. Here's the problem. If the Joseph Smith translation of that one verse is correct, and that is Abraham meeting with God for the first time. This is the first covenant. and he's just outside the city of Shechem. God comes to him and says, I will be your God, you will be my people. We will make a covenant, one between each other. And that covenant, the sign of that covenant is circumcision at 8 days old. Now it's referenced another 9 times in the Old Testament, 13 times in the Old Testament, 13 times in the New Testament. Jesus Christ is even circumcised at 8 days old. But if he did that wrong, that is, if Joseph Smith was correct and Abraham did it wrong, that means that Moses wrote it wrong.
Okay.
Then Isaiah, all the prophets of the Old Testament, to include Jesus Christ himself, did it wrong.
Yeah.
So I would ask the Mormon people this: is it possible? Is it even conceivable? Of course, the rabbis, I have what the rabbi said, and they can't even believe the question. And it was embarrassing to even formulate the question. And that is, did Joseph Smith correct the Torah? Did Joseph Smith correct what God had put in the Old Testament? Because he wanted to do that for baptism. He did not change the word baptism. He left it circumcision, which means that every Jew on the planet did it wrong. And God the Father, to stay in the Mormon mindset, God the Father watched Jesus Christ do it wrong and thought to himself.
So what do they say?
They
They're
say,
like, are you kidding me?
Not only did they say, are you kidding me? But they said that is the perfect example to prove that Joseph Smith wasn't a prophet.
Okay.
Because even within their own theology, would God the Father watch Jesus Christ do it wrong? Let me give you a couple of their comments. This is from the synagogue at the tomb of Abraham. So this is literally feet from where Abraham now lies. This is Rabbi Aaron Shekika, and he says, to contemplate what this Joseph Smith man has claimed is blasphemy, yet to believe it is insanity. So they understood the idea that Joseph Smith was correcting the Torah.
The elect of God.
Yes, exactly. and the fact that God would watch every Jew on the planet do it wrong until 1832 and say, I'm going to wait for my best prophet, Joseph Smith, and fix it, when it would have absolutely no impact on any human being.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying this too, because I was actually in Jerusalem last April. I had the opportunity to get baptized in the Jordan River, and it was an amazing experience. But I also went to the location where they have the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right, Qumran Cave number 1.
Yeah, well, I didn't go, I wanted to, but I missed that location. Okay. But there's a museum that has a number of the actual scrolls that they show, and it was Isaiah. Right. Isaiah, I think it was Isaiah 29 or 20.
The Isaiah scroll is the only scroll that's intact.
It's intact.
Right.
But wasn't there something that was very interesting that was shown in the intact Isaiah scroll that Joseph Smith put in the Joseph Smith translation?
He put his own name in there.
In the Isaiah scroll that wasn't shown, that they found the original, if you will, the original, that wasn't shown. What was that? He put his own name and also the Book of Mormon. Wasn't it something that
he made hundreds of changes to Isaiah? He made hundreds of changes, and this is kind of unique because Second Nephi, if you're a believing Mormon, you understand that the Book of Mormon says that the Book of the Lamb from the 12 apostles was correct up until the church, up until the Old Testament. So there was really no reason by the Book of Mormon to change anything in the Old Testament. So Joseph Smith was wrong there just to make any changes to that, because the Book of Mormon says it was accurate. But you're absolutely right. He did change things to make it fit himself. But the point is, the Mormon people are the only people on the planet that say that the Dead Sea Scrolls are corrupted. That's even in their Bible dictionary. So that's corrupted too? Yes, they say that in their Bible dictionary. Okay. So that's a story, again, you can tell here only in the Mormon bubble within Utah. Academically, you step outside of this area, and I've talked to not only the rabbis, but Biola University, and I've got the letter from the Smithsonian that says, hey, we don't want to discuss the Book of Mormon anymore because it's never been used for anything.
It's not a historical document in any way.
Not at all.
Okay, so when you were there, were there any other things? I mean, obviously looking at the temple, being there, and it's not really a temple location, but it is the temple location, but it's a mosque right now.
Yes, it is.
But the view on a temple is really only one temple.
Right.
So when you look at Mormonism has a number of temples. How many temples?
150 functional right now.
And it keeps growing and growing and growing. Yeah. For the Jewish understanding of temple, biblical, yes. Christian biblical. How does it make sense to have 150 temples where there's only supposed to be like one temple.
Right. Not only is there just one temple, the temple that the Mormons use has absolutely no connection to the biblical temple, and I've had that challenge out there for many years. Kathy and I did a live broadcast of our program, Mainstream Mormonism, from Jerusalem in the shadow of.
I listened to it,
and we made we made the comparison between the biblical temple and the Mormon temple.
Yeah, it's such a different, strange
There's no
belief.
connection. Even just down at Manti, last night I had an opportunity to meet the temple president in Manti, and I asked him just one question. I said, could you, President, tell me any connection between the biblical temple of the Bible and of Jesus Christ, either Solomon or Herod, and anything that happens in the Mormon temple? Any ceremony, any prayer, any room, any activity? And he said, I need to go. So there was no answer. And that was
the
from the
fact
temple
is,
president.
there is no relationship.
No, in fact, the rabbis in Jerusalem were asking me, tell me about this Mormon temple. And I said, well, they have different rooms and they do different ceremonies and the women go here. And they said, the women? Women in the temple? I said, oh, yes. And they also have showers and toilets. Toilets in the temple.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, and as I was acting stupid, and it's easy for me to do, I said, wasn't there a toilet in the temple in Jerusalem? And they just started shaking their head. And I almost lost the conversation right there. So I described baptism for the dead in the temple of God. And they said, baptism. There's even reference in the Mormon manual for the Old Testament that references baptism in Genesis. The word baptism does not exist anywhere in the Old Testament, but to save Joseph Smith's skin, modern Mormons try to tie the age of accountability to baptism and put it back to Genesis chapter 17.
Interesting.
And there's no connection between baptism.
What I do know, when I was there, and I'm sure there's going to be some LDS people probably commenting on this.
Sure.
There was more of a bath, before the temple, and
On
there
the
was
outside.
ritual washings to
Correct.
prepare themselves.
The laver, the seed.
to prepare themselves to go to the temple. Now, that was a form of ritual washing. It wasn't a baptism in the sense they felt like it was cleansing them.
Yes.
But I had the opportunity to go to Istanbul and Ephesus, and also go to the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia.
Right.
And you go see these mosques, and men are right before they enter into the mosque. They have water, a stream of water, and they're washing themselves, their neck, their face, their legs, and their feet to prepare themselves to go into the mosque. This is a ritual washing, just in their mind to feel like, okay, now I'm, in their sense, more spiritually clean.
Absolutely, and the Jews do it too, and it's called a mikvah.
But it has no relationship to baptisms.
Correct.
Earlier.
Correct. And in Jerusalem, the earliest mikvah is 150 years before Christ. So nothing in the Old Testament. Nothing.
All right.
There, not even the connection between baptism, but you're absolutely right, outside the temple. And the key point last night, I was talking to one of the former stake presidents down in Manti, and I was asking him, now how many, just as a guess, how many high priests are in the Mormon church right now? And we estimated about 5 million high priests. And I said, in biblical times, can you tell me how many high priests there were in biblical times?
At one time?
Yes, at one time. One.
Yeah.
Correct. And that one high priest had one function one time a year to go into the Holy of Holies.
Yeah, he was a changing high priest.
You bet he was.
Until Jesus became the unchanging high priest for the house of God.
Exactly. And that led us into the connection that the Melchizedek priesthood did not exist with that high priest. That high priest came from the tribe of Levi, the sons of Aaron.
Yeah.
And so there was no connection between what the Mormons call the Melchizedek priesthood and a high priest. So they completely married entirely different
fascinating subject too. Within the tribe of Lehi, what we see, it's really Aaron who received the priesthood.
Correct.
And he was the brother of Moses. And so it was really basically from the family of Aaron.
Yes.
Not the whole tribe of Levi.
That's
but
right.
the family that came down, and they had to be about 30 to 50 years old.
Yes, in fact, when you're 50, you're released. You're released at 50.
Yeah. So we don't see that sort of relationship in Mormonism where kids who are 12 years old, who could be a deacon, priest,
and Kathy brought
so
up
forth.
Kathy brought up the point to the stake president's wife, the connection between when the high priest was called, and he only did once a year. That there's millions.
Well, priests are a huge thing, obviously, in the Jewish faith. But now when we look into to Judaism,
Yes.
they still have priests. And they are still doing what they're doing, in the sense, probably not to the level where they would do it, years and years, thousands of years ago, but they still have priests. The thing that changes with us as a Christian family, we look at us having that royal priesthood because Jesus was the actual high priest, and we become part of that royal priesthood when we believe in Jesus and receiving the indwelling of the Spirit, and now we are made children of His. And so, but in actuality, for the Jewish faith, isn't it true that they lose? We view that as they lost their job.
Yes, exactly.
They lost their job because they're not doing what they're doing.
Right, when the veil was rent,
too.
that gives us full access. I even described the temple veil in Mormonism to these rabbis, and they said there's no connection. We know what the temple, how thick it was. It was 3 inches thick. And
no, it was actually it was more than 3 inches. It was 60 feet tall, 30 feet wide. And I talked to someone who knows a lot about this. In Pennsylvania, they have it. They actually have a veil, and it's like 8 inches thick.
Wow!
So it weighed almost 6,000 pounds.
And did anybody pass their hands back and forth for secret handshakes?
No, no one was bringing it. No, I don't want to get involved in that.
Okay.
But the reality is, you went there, you had some really interesting experiences.
Right.
You learned more of the differences between Judaism, Christianity, and Mormonism. So I appreciate you sharing this to help people who, have some misunderstanding of it, and how they can believe, if you're Mormon, how you can believe some of this stuff where it doesn't follow the same sequence of what the Jews believed in.
No, not at all. And part of that misunderstanding is true deception, because even in the video on LDS.org that says why Mormons build temples, if you watch that video, the second statement claims that everything in the Mormon temple is restored, that they invent nothing. Elder Packer actually says, we invent nothing, everything is restored. Yet nothing is restored.
And that doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't.
Because a restoration
out there.
has to be the exact same part.
Exactly.
If you're looking at cars, a restored car, exact same part, same number, everything has to be exactly the same. If it isn't the same, then it's not restored.
Then what do you restore it from? And the people last night we were talking to on the Street,
it makes no sense.
They said that, well, maybe they didn't live the full. And I said, then that means that everyone in the Book of Mormon also did not live under that covenant at all, because it's not in the Book of Mormon. So the priesthood, the temple, the ceremonies, baptism for the dead is not in the Book of Mormon. And it really caused a couple missionaries to stop and think when I said, so that means Alma, Abinadi, Nephi, none of them had the priesthood or had the church you have now, yet it's called the fullness of the everlasting gospel. How is that possible?
And it's interesting, too, because I was just doing a show today about Jacob in Jacob 2, where it talks about polygamy, and it was an abomination to the Lord. An abomination. This is abominable for God, to have concubines or to have polygamy. He doesn't support it, believe it. And then all of a sudden, it says that in the Book of Mormon, but then you have polygamy in Mormonism, and how could that be restored if God said it was an abomination? Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
You have to investigate. This is one of the reasons why we do this. Hey, another thing before we head out, I did want to share a couple things. There's been a lot of talk about you in the past 5 months, 6 months. In Indianapolis, you were at an experience, arrested, and you wrote a book about it. I read a number of pages that you wrote, and you're sharing your experience of what occurred. You had amazing experiences, very difficult experiences for yourself, but some also amazing, bringing some people to know the truth of Jesus Christ.
Right there in jail.
Yeah, so praise God for that. But, there's a lot of people who want the truth of this, and are you still going to be, I don't know if you could really share it as much.
I can. In fact, I've been asked this question many times, and this is a perfect opportunity to separate.
If you want to basically share to the audience.
You bet. So last September, my wife and I were witnessing out in front of the temple, the 148th temple in Indianapolis, and I was charged with 3 felonies and 18 misdemeanors because the new general authority out there in Indiana, Paul H. Sinclair, was also an attorney, and I didn't know any of this. And so he ramped up some false charges, and I was arrested. I spent 6 days in jail. I'm still on 3 years probation, but
a probation of what? What's your
that
probation?
I can't go back to Indiana, and I can't communicate with them, which is fine. But what I wanted to tell you is many people have asked, well, Lee, I wanted to write letters and I wanted to find out what was going on, because in the book I detail all the corruption from Salt Lake that has made it out to Indiana. Corrupt police, corrupt the law firm that he works for, all of that. Those restrictions are against me, not against anybody else. So if anybody else wants to take the opportunity to communicate with those people, that's up to you. I am not asking anybody to do that. And in fact, I can't do that. But other people have said, Lee, I don't want to get you in trouble. Please understand, when you read the story in the book, Jailed for Teaching the Gospel of Jesus Christ in America, and it's about...
Where can they get that?
Anywhere. Online, Amazon, and also on our website. It's only $7.
Okay.
And every penny of that goes to gas for things like this
Sure.
to come out here. But it's an amazing story. If you have any idea of the corruption of Mormonism, and especially with a new general authority, Paul H. Sinclair. So this is the point. What I want to say is those restrictions that I list in that book are for me. If people want to exercise their freedom of speech that I cannot do anymore, they're free to do that. They're free to talk to the...
Only in Indiana. You could do anywhere else, right?
No, I am restricted to communicate with the agency that he works for. He's an attorney for Ice Miller. I can't communicate with him. I was tricked into coming back to court, and I was arrested in court. The whole story's in the book.
But you
it's
could
amazing.
go and still preach and teach outside. And can you go to other temples? Or
Yes.
You
Yes.
can't do it?
No, I just
Okay.
can't communicate with him. The
okay.
whole story's in the book, but a lot of people have said, Lee, I don't want to write any of the clients of this firm, Ice Miller, or I don't want to write Paul E. Sinclair, H. Sinclair, who's a general authority, because I don't want to get you in trouble. The point is, those restrictions are against me. If you feel that you need to call, you need to write, you need to email, you need to question their corruption, go ahead and do it. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm telling you, don't limit your freedom of speech based off of what I have been, the abuse I've been through. So I did spend 6 days in jail.
Wow. Yeah,
as among rapists and murderers.
Wow.
Roughed up a little bit in jail. And it was absolutely incredible, Dave. 36 years service with the National Security Agency and the government. Never been arrested in my life. 60 years old. And this man invents reasons for 3 felonies and then puts me in jail with the worst of the worst. And I believe that he intended something very bad. And I do want to add that, praise God, the opportunity to teach the gospel in jail was absolutely amazing. 4 men listened to me talk about the gospel of Jesus Christ, and not in comparison to Mormonism. It was really awesome for the Lord to kind of correct me and not merge my my wanting to prepare people for Mormon discussions, and it was just the pure gospel of Jesus Christ. 2 men came to the Lord, first time ever, right there in prison.
It's amazing what God could do with people that are like in a sort of an environment that and all of a sudden you become a shining light to them and give them hope, and then all of a sudden they realize it, feel it, sense it, learn it, and come to accept Jesus as Lord and Savior. Awesome. You know, there's amazing things going on in the ministry. My ministry, your ministry, many other ministries that are
I think the Lord's
tied with Mormonism. You know, when you look at what is going on, we have to just really praise the Lord and just say thank you, God. You know, this is your favor. This is not us.
He's moving a major work.
Major things
Utah.
are going on.
Oh yeah.
And there's a big fallout, obviously.
There is.
One of the things that I believe in is to help those people who are leaving, not for them to become atheists, but to come to a relationship with Jesus. I have a ministry, you're part of it, is MormonDetox.com.
That's right.
That's a way for people who are interested in wanting to know more information. As a matter of fact, they could go to you and talk to you about that as well, so they could develop this relationship.
We love working with the Mormon people.
You know, a lot of Mormons, if you're watching this, I hear this often, and I'm sure you've heard it, where people who are Mormons, they say, you can leave the church, but you can't leave the church alone.
Ah,
Have you heard that?
I've heard that all the time.
And you know what? Why don't you share your views right now to some of these people who are actually listening to you, and they're saying, yeah, why can't you just leave us alone? We have a good life, you know, our life is satisfactory.
That is an
we have
excellent
fun.
question.
Why are you constantly trying to bring us negativity and something that we don't want to listen to?
Uh-huh.
Why do you think that's the case? How would you answer that?
That was challenged last night. I have the gospel topic essays, all 13 of them that I've printed out. And our ministry, like I said, is teaching Mormonism to the Mormons. So what we do is, if I meet a Mormon, and I've met Mormons, Dave, who said, I understand the church history. I understand what Brigham Young did, Joseph Smith did. I understand polygamy, polyandry, blood atonement, and I'm happy with it. The problem is the majority of the church, myself included, does not know what the leadership of the Mormon church has published relative to the history of the church. So what happened in the year 1890? The church issued a manifesto that said that we will stop polygamy. Yeah. Well, the secret was, among the Mormon church, they knew not to read it because it was published for Washington, D.C. It had no effect on the Mormons. That's exactly what these church essays are doing. The leadership of the Mormon church have finally become honest about their past lies. So the 5 questions that drove me, a former bishop, out of the Mormon church 7 years ago, I was told those were lies. They're now truth, and they have published essays on those things signed by the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And those things are, Joseph Smith really did marry nearly 40 women. He had 11 women that were married to other men. That the Book of Mormon was translated by Joseph Smith using a rock in a hat, then he would put his face in the hat. And I had the picture that all Mormon children have seen of Joseph Smith running his cute little fingers across the golden plates, and Emma said he didn't do that.
Yeah.
Emma Smith.
David Whitmer.
Yes.
Oliver Calgary.
The plates were not
Martin
even
Harris.
in the room. So the point is this. Through the church historical gospel topic essays is the verification that what were rumors 10 years ago are now confirmed fact by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that's a lie.
So are you saying that those who talk to their bishop, those who talk to their stake president about these things, they could have been excommunicated for?
Absolutely. I was excommunicated for asking those questions.
So I have a really interesting thought. Now this is really fascinating. So if they were excommunicated and they now have revealed
I did what you're going to ask me. I wrote the First Presidency and said, can I have another trial?
Yes.
I actually wrote the First Presidency.
Can they be unexcommunicated?
Oh, well, if you would want to. I would like to be retried. Thomas S. Monson is second.
It wasn't a fair trial now.
No, absolutely not. If I was asking questions about these things, the history of the church, the fact that the vignettes, the Book of Abraham, the church actually has acknowledged now that the characters in the papyrus that built the Book of Abraham have nothing to do with the Book of Abraham. Yeah. Yet year after year after year, they will print millions of those vignettes, those facsimiles, in the Book of Abraham with all of those descriptions, and they have a document that says they have nothing to do with it. So now what they have done, and I think for legal reasons, the church has now put the onus on the membership. Years ago, my generation, I could have said that I was misled, I was deceived, I was lied to. That's gone now. The Church of Jesus Christ, for legal reasons probably, have come out and they have said, these are the facts. If you deal with them, that's up to you. But they're so hard to find, and they haven't publicized them, but they're out there. So never again can a member of the Mormon church approach the First Presidency and say, you have lied to me.
Interesting.
They will say, no, it's out there. If you don't like it, if you have problems with it, but we have put it out there.
So they're trying to protect themselves.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's a I could see after an institution that's very, very, very wealthy, trying to do that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be doing a show in the near future about going to all these other churches and having them disclose their financial statements to me, and having all those statements, because I don't know if you knew this or not, but there's a lot of churches who disclose their financial statements.
Our church does in California.
Yeah, of course. You sit down every year, you know exactly what the pastor is making, all their expenses, the loans, everything, all the costs, ministries and everything.
Buildings.
So, yeah, you get to see all that. And there's so many churches that do it. And I'm going to show that, and I'm going to go to the LDS church and ask them that same question. Can we see your financial statement?
That would be awesome.
But why?
And
they can't. But why?
The potential for fraud still exists, I believe, in the Mormon Church, because my generation was brought up under false beliefs that Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon the way he did, and he didn't. The fact that Joseph Smith had so many wives, and it was against the Book of Mormon, it was against the Doctrine and Covenants, it was against the Bible. The fact that most of what the church produce now as doctrine, like the Book of Abraham, is completely made up. Those are lies, and that is fraud. When you take somebody's money based on that, and you teach that Joseph Smith did these things,
and you believe it.
You believe it
based on what you were taught.
Correct. So in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Isn't that sort of like an absence of malice, or I don't know, isn't there some fraud going on?
I would love to, I offer my services free of charge to any legal corporation that would like to attempt to do a class action suit against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for fraud. I know the details. I can produce the details.
Interesting. Hey, well, I'm so glad you're here. I know you've got another show in a couple minutes. You got to leave, but I just want to thank you. I know that you're doing a good work for the Lord, and you're putting it out there every week.
We try
on your show. You might want to also let people who don't know what your show is.
Sure.
You might introduce it.
Mainstream Mormonism here in Salt Lake every Saturday at 4:00. It's now a half-hour program, and then we mimic that in Liberia as well. We're having great success in Liberia. Black Mormons are leaving the church in droves.
Awesome.
They don't have the access that we do here, but they know that they've been. And the radio archives for those are at leebaker.4mormon.org under radio archives, and we have over 100 programs.
Okay, good. So there are a lot of things you're doing. I'm going to be doing full-time ministry.
That
also.
Is awesome. God.
So praise God for
good.
that.
That is awesome.
Praise God. Things are moving out in that direction. But we want to thank you for watching. This has hopefully been a very effective and meaningful video for you to watch. If you have any questions, please just write down below. You can contact me. You can contact Lee. Go to MormonDetox.com. We love you as Mormons, and also if you're a Christian who's not LDS, you could also use this to preach to Mormons. I think there's some really valuable insight that you have learned today. Thanks for watching, and God bless you guys.
God bless you.